Hi, this is New Time on Silkway TV channel. We introduce you with the most visible news and important events that happen throughout this week in Kazakhstan and Central Asia. More details on politics, economy, social and cultural life with opinions from the most recognizable experts of Kazakhstan and world. I'm Ainur Mangali and let us start from the official agenda in the country. President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev chaired a Security Council meeting focused on strengthening the country's defense. This was the second meeting in 2 weeks, with discussions centered on boosting Kazakhstan's military capabilities, modernizing the armed forces and upgrading the army's equipment with modern weaponry. The council made decisions regarding the supply of military equipment, including some produced domestically. At the conclusion of the meeting, the president issued several directives aimed at enhancing national security. This week, President Tokayev also held a phone conversation with Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev. The head of state proposed Kazakhstan's largest city, Almaty, as a venue for peace talks aimed at resolving the conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia. The leaders also discussed issues of bilateral cooperation, with President Tokayev highlighting the strong momentum in trade, economic, cultural and humanitarian ties. In return, Ilham Aliyev congratulated Kazakhstan on the successful organization of the 5th World Nomad Games, in which Azerbaijani athletes actively participated. This week, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev also met with Turkish National Defense Minister Yaşar Güler. President Tokayev emphasized the importance of developing bilateral relations between Kazakhstan and Turkey, as well as their strategic cooperation and partnership. He also extended his best wishes to his counterpart, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Yaşar Güler in turn expressed gratitude for the warm reception and praised Kazakhstan's efforts in addressing regional and international issues. The meeting covered matters of security cooperation between Turkey and Kazakhstan. Kassym-Jomart Tokayev also welcomed Zurab Pololikashvili, the Secretary General of the UN World Tourism Organization, in Akorda. Kazakh president expressed his appreciation for the Secretary General's presence at the opening ceremony of the 5th World Nomad Games and for the organization's ongoing support. The president reiterated Kazakhstan's dedication to collaborating closely with the UN, WTO, and voiced enthusiasm for advancing joint tourism projects. Secretary General, in response, thanked President Tokayev for the gracious reception and lauded the impressive organization of the World Nomad Games in Astana. The two leaders explored new avenues for expanding their partnership, focusing on political measures to boost Kazakhstan's tourism profile and enhance its global standing. The spectacular World Nomad Games have concluded in Kazakhstan, and it's time to celebrate the achievements of the national team. Kazakhstan claimed first place in the overall team standings among all participating countries, earning a total of 114 medals, including 43 gold, 34 silver and 37 bronze. Kyrgyzstan secured second place with 19 gold medals, while Russia took third with 12 golds. And we'd like to congratulate our team on this incredible result. The Games began on September 8th. In over 6 days, athletes competed in 21 traditional sports. More than 2,500 athletes from 89 countries participated in the events. The honor of hosting the next World Nomad Games in 2 years has now been passed to the founding nation, the Kyrgyz Republic. Mongolia may host the World Nomad Games in the future, said former Mongolian President Nambarin Engbayar in an exclusive interview with a New Time reporter. Speaking from the mobile studio at the heart of the Ethno Village, one of the key venues of the Nomad Games, he emphasized the significance of the event, highlighting that nomadic culture is an integral part of global human civilization, as demonstrated by the wide geographical range of participants. Let's watch the interview right now.
Dear former President, thank you very much for being here. It's actually a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you that you agreed to do this interview. So let me start with this question. You witnessed the opening ceremony of the 5th World Nomad Games. So could you please tell us what was your impression?
Well, I think the very idea of having World Nomadic Games is a very good idea. And so we have to be grateful to our Kyrgyz brothers. And now it's very good that Kazakhstan has taken this game to the land of Kazakhs and to Astana city. And I was impressed by the enthusiasm of the people. People were united with this good idea of having the common heritage. So the second impression I got was the nomadic culture is not only the culture or civilization which is being kept and developed by Kazakhs, Mongolians, Kyrgyz people, but you see so many people from even the United States, United Kingdom, France, European countries, Asian countries, African countries have come to participate in this event. So it thinks that I think that it shows that nomadic culture is a part of global human culture and human civilization. I think this is a very important thing, and I think that this good idea will be further continued. And I heard that Kyrgyzstan is going to hold it next time again, and then maybe the number of countries who will be hosting this event will increase.
So may I ask you this, how do you evaluate the significance of these World Nomad Games in strengthening bilateral relations between Mongolia and Kazakhstan?
Well, this is a good venue for Mongolian and Kazakh authorities to meet. I used to know President Takayev when I was the president of Mongolia, and he was the foreign minister and also the speaker of the Senate. So I have very good memories about our meetings, and we have been working quite actively to strengthen our relations. We have in Mongolia the so-called policy of third neighbor, which means that although we are surrounded by our two big neighbors like Russia and China, but Kazakhstan is the nearest third neighbor. It's just 40 kilometers territory of Russia which is dividing us, but culturally, historically, and also psychologically we are very close neighbors. Even I can say that we are brothers.
And I've got one last question. Do you consider the possibility of Mongolia to host the next maybe World Nomad Games?
I think Mongolia has got the potential and should have an interest in hosting this kind of big events. Of course, we need to study, we have to prepare quite well, but personally I think that Mongolia should be a host in the future of this World Nomadic Games. And I think we have plenty of sports and also cultural kind of activities which we have inherited from our ancestors, and we can be proud of our heritage, and we will be able to share with this heritage with the other world.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much.
And now to some other major news topics. On Tuesday in Philadelphia, the stage was set for a high-stakes debate between the Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, who replaced Joe Biden in the Democratic Party's election race. While polls and ratings indicate a win for Harris, experts believe Trump still has a strong shot at the presidency. For the key moments from the first and possibly last debate between the candidates before the election, see the report by Baljan Semigulina.
Kamala Harris, let's have a good debate.
Have fun.
Thank you.
It's
This was a surprise handshake between the two opponents. At first, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris clashed on the U.S. economy. Harris attacked Trump's intention to impose high tariffs on foreign goods, a proposal she has likened to a sales tax on the middle class, while touting her plan to offer tax benefits to families and small businesses, and attacking Donald Trump for what the Biden administration inherited.
Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess.
Whereas Trump criticized Harris for the persistent inflation during the Biden administration's term, though he overstated the level of price increases. Inflation, he said, has been a disaster for people, for middle class, for every class.
Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history.
Trump's main theme was illegal immigration. He repeatedly accused the current administration of allowing in millions of criminals who he said were destroying the country.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame.
Harris was quickly on the offensive, blaming Trump for the Supreme Court's ruling restricting abortion. She hit the former president hard on his abortion stance, a crucial issue for millions of voters, delivering a lengthy attack on abortion limits, speaking passionately about women denied emergency care and victims of incest unable to terminate their pregnancies.
One does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body.
The candidates clashed repeatedly on foreign policy, including the war in the Middle East.
I want to save lives.
It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out.
Kamala Harris' campaign has extended an invitation to Donald Trump for a second presidential debate in October. Trump has responded he would not participate in another debate ahead of the election. Thus, the results of debates remain controversial. So the only important verdict will be from the voters on November 5th. Полжан Самигулина, New Time.
According to a Reuters poll, Kamala Harris is leading her opponent Donald Trump in nationwide popularity following the recent debates. The survey shows Harris with a 47% approval rating, while Trump was 42%. But does this mean the winner is already clear? What differences in campaign promises might be decisive for voters? And what foreign policy direction will the new White House administration take? Our reporter Daurian Isagulov spoke with Professor of Political Science at University of British Columbia, Terry Givens, about these key issues. Let's take a detailed look at the main differences between the Trump and Harris campaigns in the next report.
Prosecutor versus felon, that's how tabloids have titled the face-off between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, referencing both candidates' pasts. The US presidential election has turned into perhaps the most thrilling political event, filled with unexpected twists. An assassination attempt on former President Trump, the disappointing debate performance by incumbent President Joe Biden, and his decision to withdraw from the race all added to the drama. However, the tension and uncertainty within the Democratic Party, which lost its main contender against the Republicans, didn't last long. Joe Biden named Vice President Kamala Harris as his successor.
I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
Although Harris has been vice president for more than 3 years, a September poll by the New York Times shows that many Americans still know little about her, with 28% of respondents expressing a desire to learn more. According to Professor of Political Science at University of British Columbia, Terry Givens, the Democratic Party had no choice but to back her nomination without holding primaries.
There was a sense among many in the Democratic Party that she is the natural successor to President Biden. There was also a large contingent of Democrats who felt that trying to have a very shortened, primary. Anyway, there were a lot of proposals thrown around, kind of before President Biden stepped down, trying to say, well, we could do this, we could do that. I think the leadership in the Democratic Party, as well as many rank and file, felt that Kamala Harris was already on the ticket. It wouldn't take much to change the ballots.
Whether this move came as a surprise to the Republicans and whether Trump's team managed to outplay the strategy is a debated question among the academic community, admits Givens. In his battle against Biden, Donald Trump mocked his age and inability to manage the White House, while also calling the administration's domestic and foreign policies the most disastrous in history. Now facing a younger opponent, Donald Trump and the Republicans have adopted a rather straightforward tactic. Quote, "Nothing will change, she is Biden."
If she gets in, I think we will have a depression, 1929-style depression. That's what I think will happen to our country.
And I don't think the Trump campaign expected Joe Biden to perform so badly in that debate. And so I think that was a bit of a surprise for them, because days before the debate, they were kind of preparing the ground to say, oh, fighting Joe Biden will come out.
According to data from the Pew Research Center, the average American voter is primarily focused on domestic policy issues, with 76% of voters believing that the outcome of the election is crucial for the U.S. economy. Therefore, it's no surprise that the bulk of the campaign revolves around promises related to economic matters. Initially, Harris faced criticism for having a vague economic agenda and placing too much emphasis on Trump's character during the campaign.
I mean, she certainly attacks me personally. She actually called me weird. He's weird. I think I'm entitled to personal attacks. I don't have a lot of respect for her. I don't have a lot of respect for her intelligence. And I think she'll be a terrible president.
On the economy, Trump hasn't really spelled out much of a plan except for giving tax breaks to billionaires, whereas Kamala Harris is talking about increasing corporate tax rates and taxing billionaires and increasing support for entrepreneurs, offering a tax break.
As president, I will be laser focused on creating opportunities for the middle class that advance their economic security, stability, and dignity. Together, we will build what I call an opportunity economy.
Trump, however, continues to appeal to his accomplishments during his first term as a president. In 2018, the U.S. economy grew by 2.9%, a rise largely attributed to Trump's tax reform. Although the COVID-19 pandemic that followed disrupted the results of his efforts, Trump is now promising to return to his previous policies and, as he puts it, make America great again.
Together we will deliver low taxes, low regulations, low energy costs, low interest rates, low inflation, so that everyone can afford groceries, a car, and a home. Common sense. We will stop the invasion, end the migrant crime, support our great police, save Medicare, and save Social Security, which is under siege.
Illegal immigration is a major concern for undecided voters in swing states, whose votes could determine the outcome of the election. On this issue, Trump harshly criticizes Harris, labeling her the failed border czar, implying that her policy have only led to an increase in the number of illegal immigrants. He also links this to a rise in crime, though there is no data to support these claims.
But no crime Kamala has committed against the rule of law is worse than her nation-wrecking border invasion. There's never been anything like it. The day I take office is the day that Kamala's crime wave comes to an end. It's a crime wave in our country. We've never seen anything like it.
Trump has talked about deporting 11 million people. I just don't think that's feasible and would lead to huge conflict in the U.S., whereas Kamala Harris is calling for immigration reform. She wants to revive the bill that was a bipartisan immigration bill that Trump asked Congress, Republican congressmen, not to push forward, even though it was ready to be passed, and would have led to more support for our border folks in terms of increasing the number of Border Patrol officers.
As for foreign policy, the current administration was unable to resolve the longest-running conflict in modern times. Whoever takes the Oval Office will also face the challenge of addressing the Israeli-Palestinian crisis. Experts believe that the current administration's Middle East policy will likely continue regardless of the election outcome. Trump has already accused Harris of hating Israel, suggesting that if she wins, the State of Israel could cease to exist. Harris, like Biden before her, has stated her support for Israel's right to self-defense and confirmed her commitment to the two-state solution.
At the same time, what has happened in Gaza over the past 10 months is devastating. So many innocent lives lost. Desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety over and over again. The scale of suffering is heartbreaking. President Biden and I are working to end this war such that Israel is secure, the hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination.
In the case of a Trump victory, significant changes in the U.S. middle policy are unlikely, according to Terry Givens. In August, Trump had a phone conversation with Netanyahu, during which they discussed the ceasefire in the Gaza Strip and the release of hostages.
He knows what he's doing. I did encourage him to get this over with. You want to get it over with. It has to get over with fast. But have victory, get your victory, and get it over with. It has to stop. The killing has to stop.
Experts are reluctant to speculate on the outcome of the election. According to Terry Givens, scholars generally avoid making predictions. The experience of the Trump versus Hillary Clinton contest showed that neither polls nor debate results significantly influence the outcome of U.S. elections. The same might be true for elections in 2024. Dauriana Sagulov, New Time.
It's high time to repeal the Jackson-Vanik Amendment in relation to Kazakhstan, said Dr. Kamran Bohari, Senior Director of the Eurasian Security and Prosperity Portfolio at the New Lines Institute for Strategy and Policy, in an interview for New Time. He highlighted that the bill's success depends largely on timing, political priorities, and the current geopolitical landscape. However, Dr. Bohari is optimistic about the bill's chances, but acknowledges that a new administration and ongoing political negotiations will influence its progress. Let me remind you that the Jackson-Vanik Amendment is in addition to the U.S. trade law restricting trade with countries that hinder immigration and violate other human rights. The amendment originally applied to the USSR and still affects Kazakhstan today, despite the country's numerous attempts to have it repealed. However, in May of this year, U.S. congressmen introduced a bill aimed at repealing it to improve trade relations with Kazakhstan, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. For the repeal bill to become law, it must first pass the U.S. House of Representatives and then the Senate. What are the prospects of this bill passing through these political bodies? To find out, watch the interview with an expert right now.
Dr. Bohari, thank you very much for joining us from Washington. It's a great pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, let us talk about the fate and future of Jackson-Vanik Amendment. Currently, it remains in effect into some countries, including Kazakhstan. But in May of this year, U.S. congressman introduced a bill aimed at enhancing trade relations between Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan and the United States. And to what extent do you think it is possible that it's going to be repealed and this bill can pass both the U.S. House of Representatives and the Senate?
I think it's possible. I think the issue is one of timing. I don't see any reason why they would not pass. But the question is to build a consensus. And for Central Asia to become a priority, there are a few things that are in, obstacles in the path of this becoming a priority for Congress, both in the Senate and the House of Representatives. First and foremost, this is an election year. And so all politics is local. And therefore, that's the priority. Getting reelected is the priority, and this is a presidential election year, and it's heating up. And as everybody knows, it's a very tight race. So I think that's first and foremost. Second is, let's say we get passed through the elections and whatever next administration comes in, whether a Kamala Harris administration or a second Trump administration, it will take some time for them to settle into the office. Then there have to be other, if you will, precursors that will elevate the status of this bill and create the consensus that's needed for it to be approved by both houses. And that has to do with, Eurasian geopolitics.
When do you think it might happen? Perhaps until the end of next year?
It's hard to say exactly how long it will take, but let's just say that it will be, I wouldn't be surprised if we're discussing this next summer, because as you know, installation happens in January, and then, it takes a few months for the administration to be up and running with all the appointments and whatnot. And barring any other problems that may come, about on the foreign policy front or the domestic policy front, I think it will be some time.
So can we say that U.S. administration is interested in enhancing relations, especially trade relations between the mentioned states as Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan? And if yes, to what extent do you think? In what
I think that, yes, there is far more incentive, especially because of the Trans-Caspian Corridor project. There is definitely an interest in enhancing trade ties with Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. With Tajikistan, it's a bit different because of the situation in Afghanistan and the domestic political situation in Tajikistan. But again, it's not a game changer, if you will. So we just have to wait and see how this repeal is packaged. And, will it affect all three countries, or will it affect two and not the third? Or what is that formula is something that we just need to wait and see what emerges from the conversations within the House.
Yeah, so apart from this logistics sector, let's call it, what other sectors do you think are the most prioritized now between US and, let's take only example of Kazakhstan, because now turnover between two countries reached $3 billion US, and how it can change after repealing this amendment?
I think there's a potential for trade to increase many-fold. I don't want to put a number to it because it's hard to speculate on those kind of things, especially when we're dealing with exact numbers. But I would say that, excuse me, that look, as you saw last September, about a year ago, when we had the first ever summit meeting on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly session with President Biden and his 5 counterparts from Central Asia, that shows that, at least for the Biden administration, and on this case, I think there's it's not just one administration or the other. I think there's a bipartisan understanding that relations with Central Asia have to be improved, and the need for critical minerals, in which Kazakhstan can play a significant role, I think will elevate the incentive to repeal Jackson-Vanik. And as you know, these the mining and the metallurgy and the development of a critical mineral supply chain from Kazakhstan to the United States and to the to the West in general is going to take priority. And I think there are many reasons why this amendment should be repealed.
That's a good point to stop our conversation. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been
my pleasure. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Meanwhile, the decision-making mechanism at the international level is stuck in the past. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres highlighted in an article published on the Kazakh international news agency. In his message ahead of the UN's Summit of the Future, which will take place the next week at the headquarters of the organization, the high-ranked diplomat noted that the victors of the World War II still hold dominant positions in the UN Security Council, while no country from the entire African continent has a permanent seat within it. Therefore, global financial institutions must reflect the realities of today's world and possess the capability to respond more effectively to contemporary challenges such as debt relief, sustainable development, and combating climate change. And that's it for today. All the main news about Kazakhstan and Central Asia you can find here. More special projects about our country you can also watch on Silkway TV channel. So stay tuned and see you next week.